You have such a great grasp on data and kind of the key to really using it to your advantage. From your lens at Goodway Group, is there a foundational misunderstanding that a lot of marketers have about data? Is there something that you've seen recur over and over in your time?
So I think one of the biggest things that marketers get wrong about data is that everyone's like, I got to have more data. I got to have more data.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we try to encourage people to think about is if you're not going to do anything with that data, you probably don't need it. Like if you don't
Yes.
need, I think a lot of times it's also like, let's measure all the things. And look, I love to measure things as much as the next person. But if I'm not going to make a decision based off of that, what I learned from that measurement, I've really kind of just wasted some effort. And so I think it's about being really purposeful about what it is that you want to understand, what it is that you want to learn, and what actions you're going to take as a result of having that data. Now, there's kind of two sides of this coin. Sometimes you can think you can be really purposeful and say like I really want to prove like this hypothesis. You do have to be careful that you don't like let the data or your bias kind of get into where the data is going to take you. You don't want to jump to a preconceived notion. But I also think you have to trade that off with you also don't want to go on a fishing trip. Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to try to boil the ocean or whatever water-based analogy you want to use there.
Yes.
You need to have an idea of what you're looking for and what information you want to ask. And I think we also need to ask better questions of the data. So I think a lot of times people are like, well, I just need to know how is my marketing working? Well, that's a
Yeah.
very broad question.
Yes.
I actually yesterday had one of my favorite things to do with my colleagues. We just sort of had a whiteboard session where we were like mapping things out. And I was with our head of analytics and data and our head of investment. And we were talking about how to create measurement. And it was sort of like, what if we could have like thousands of segments that we are running all at one time and we're going to see what pops to the top and we're going to try to do this measurement. And it's like on the face, like, yes, let's test those things. Let's find those things. But when you look at like, okay, but if we really want to measure it properly, we're going to have to build a very complex mousetrap to be able to measure all of those different segments properly. And I think it's like, okay, well, let's not scrap that idea, but let's think about how we can make it more actionable and more action
Mm-hmm.
oriented. So like
Yes.
instead of just like let's find thousands of different audiences that we might want to test. Let's think about those audiences more purposeful. Is this an acquisition audience? Is there a part of this acquisition audience that we think makes them particularly relevant? Are there signals that we have about this audience that make them more likely to convert? And can we start to kind of like test and learn against those? So I think going in, having a really clear purpose and what
Mm-hmm.
you want to measure and what you're going to do about it later. Because if the answer is
Yeah.
it's just an interesting factoid, like that's not enough.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it so many times that people looking at the data, they want to see a this or a that. And this
Yes,
is an
yeah.
audio medium, so I should say they're looking for a huge spike
Yep.
or a huge dip.
Yes.
And that is not analytics. Like the
Yes,
data is not
yes.
going to do the work for you. You
Correct.
need that curiosity.
Yeah,
You need to take a scientific look at it.
absolutely.
I really keep coming back to that. I think it's a great guide for
Yeah.
marketers that they wouldn't necessarily come to naturally. It's the
Yeah.
creative, ephemeral, emotional. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, but let's approach it with discipline. eh, You
Absolutely.
know,